What's going on, everybody? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Review and Preview. I'm your host, Tom Scavetta, joined alongside Kyle Russo and James Montefusco. Welcome back, fellas. It's been a long month and a half without shows, and I'm really excited to get this one jump started tonight. How's it going, my friends?
It's been a while, guys. It's been a while, but full of energy and ready to rejoice in the new chapter of the show and move into this football season.
Yeah, James, looking forward to having you back as well. You're going to be in and out tonight, running stuff behind the scenes. Yep. I do apologize for the lighting beforehand. Had a little issue in my living room, so I had to switch to my bedroom at the very last moment. But really looking forward to the show tonight. We're going to be doing a full AFC preview show. We're going to have fans from 4 different teams on, one from each division. We're going to have Vinny Milani on from the Jacksonville Jaguars in just a few moments, followed by Alec Walt, Caitlin McCarthy, and then we'll have our AFC West representative as well joining us here tonight. So before you go any further, make sure to check us out on all social media platforms below at Review and Preview on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and follow our YouTube channel at Review and Preview Sports. And if you want to comment in our stream, feel free to comment, just like Andy Hopper did. The boys are back, running it back, like back to July. It's like we never left. So thank you very much for that comment, Andy. And at this time, we're going to bring up our first special guest of the evening, my good buddy, all the way down from Jacksonville, Florida, Vinny Milani. Vinny, how's it going, my friend?
What's up, guys? What's up? How's it going?
Going well, man. How you doing?
What's up?
Fantastic. Living the dream as a Jags fan as much as I can.
I actually just came back from Jacksonville last week. I was down there for the week, so definitely a very fun city, fun place, very entertaining. And there's been a lot going on down in Jacksonville right now, and we have to cover it because I am really looking forward to seeing this team take the field this season because there's a lot of unknowns. You mentioned to me there's some good, there's some bad. Let's start with some good. Trevor Lawrence, drafted number 1 overall, being named your starting quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And what are your thoughts on that?
Hopeful. I'm hopeful for it. I'm excited. I'm excited that this team actually has a starting quarterback for now that I can trust. We'll see how Urban Meyer can handle it, but it's nice to have the comfort of trusting a starting quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is a phenomenal talent and a phenomenal prospect. We'll see how it translates to the pros, but it's an exciting time for all Jags fans, especially with Trevor Lawrence at center.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kyle, actually, I wanted to get to you here. You were advocating that Jacksonville could potentially be, I think it was either you or James, somebody said they could potentially lurk around that 500 mark this year.
I thought that. I thought that they had a very quiet offseason for the first couple of days. They were signing a lot of guys that personally I had never even heard of, but I thought that they had a very good draft, and I thought that what they did was, while the one constant on the team last year, and Vinny, maybe you could advocate for this as well, was James Robinson. And people questioned taking Travis Etienne with that first-round pick. We'll get into that in a little bit. But having, your best friend as a quarterback and a guy that you've gained chemistry with in college, what better transition to help you in the pros than having your college running back help you out in the pros? So I thought that would have been a team to go forward with, adding Marvin Jones, having a nice little receiving core. But and stuff has already hit the fan a little bit, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Typical Jacksonville.
Yeah. Vinny, now last year you guys won, what was it, just one game, 1 or 2 games, trying to remember. 1-15, right?
Yeah, 1-15. Yeah. Oh, yeah, 1-15. It was just the one, the week 1.
You guys won the first week of the season.
Yeah, gave us hope.
True. Beat the Colts. I remember that game. Now your other quarterback, Gardner Minshew, just got traded away to Philadelphia. I know for me, I'm happy for him, but as a Giants fan, I'm not too thrilled about that because I actually think Minshew could be something in this league. I think there's a chance we could potentially see him starting over Jalen Hurts this year, one of the bottom 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think Gardner Minshew being traded to the Eagles, Jacksonville in return gets a 2022 conditional 6th-round pick. What are your thoughts on the trade for Minshew? Do you like the return? What are you thinking about Minshew?
I'm okay with the return. I'm perfectly fine with the 6th-round pick. I'm pretty sure it turns into a 5th depending on how many games he plays or starts for them. But I've never really been a fan of Minshew. A lot of people in Jacksonville just loved him. He took over the city for a good couple months because of his mustache, because of his hair. But honestly, on the field, once you get past all the sideshow stuff that he brings, which is not his fault, it's just who he is. But once you get past all that, I actually don't think he's that good of a quarterback. I think he's a smaller bodies. I don't want to compare him to like a Drew Brees, but he's got that Drew Brees size, but he's not able to kind of handle himself in the pocket like a Drew Brees was able to do. But so I wouldn't, if I'm a Giants fan, I'm not really too concerned about Gardner Minshew stepping up and taking over for Philadelphia. I just didn't think he was that good.
I disagree completely. I thought that this was a complete steal by the Philadelphia Eagles, to be quite honest with you. This is a guy who's 25 years old, completed 63% of his passes with 37 touchdowns and 11 interceptions with a 93 percentage rating in his first 2 seasons. And all they got was a 6th-round pick out of him. I mean, this was a guy that in the offseason, at least, that teams were, not coveting, but interested in. Like Denver was a team that was interested for a while. Other teams were interested in him, and I thought that they could potentially get something a little better, maybe a 4th or 5th of the guy, especially because of what he's shown. Again, you got to remember what he was working with. In the games in which he played, he never looked bad. In the games in which he played, he just had nothing around him. I think that would be my sticking point against him, is that where you say there's not too much to worry about him in a Philadelphia Eagles uniform, I think it's more so because there's Philly's having their own issues right now, kind of similar to how Jacksonville was the first 2 seasons of his career.
And that's exactly why I think he's not going to be able to do great, because Philadelphia is in a similar situation as Jacksonville was with they're still developing talent around him, and I don't think that they have the pieces around Minshew to make him the quarterback that he can be. He's got potential. The kid's got heart. That's the one thing that I loved about him every single week, is he had heart. He was grinding it out, doing whatever he can. I mean, the offensive line was trash in Jacksonville last year, and this guy is scrambling, doing whatever it took to get yards and make plays. But I just didn't see that it factor. And he's young. He's still very young and can be developed. And I think that's why that's the positive takeaway for the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're an Eagles fan, that Gardner Minshew still can be molded into whatever quarterback you want him to be.
Right. That's an excellent point. Now, Vinny, we want to ask you our next question about Travis Etienne. Obviously, there was a lot of good vibes in Jacksonville when they drafted him. What's the vibe been like recently, now that Etienne is out for the season with the Lisfranc injury, knowing that you have a serviceable backup in James Robinson, who was decent last year, behind, in my opinion, a not-so-great offensive line?
Yeah, I might have to correct you on that one. Jacksonville did not like that Travis Etienne pick. A lot of Jags fans hated that pick. They thought it was a reach, and they didn't need it because of how well James Robinson did in his rookie season. I mean, he was one of the best. He's one of the all-time great undrafted rookies to come out. And I mean, I think James Robinson is a good running back. I think Urban Meyer drafted Travis Etienne because Travis Etienne fits that Urban Meyer style of offense that he ran in college, and I think that's what's going to end up being the problem, is Urban Meyer's not going to have that guy. I think personally, James Robinson was still going to be the number 1 back for Jacksonville heading into the season, even if Travis Etienne was healthy. I think he was going to still carry the rock on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down, and they're going to bring Travis Etienne as kind of a gadget player, and that's normally when you say gadget player, you're kind of like, oh, it's a waste, or it's the hit or miss, Taysom Hill, things like that. Travis Etienne would have been used a lot under Urban Meyer as a gadget player, but now they don't have him, and it leads you to say that's why they kept Tavon Austin today instead of cutting him, because Tavon Austin will try to do his best Travis Etienne impression under Urban Meyer.
Yeah, I mean, I did want them to take the safety out of TCU, Morig, at that pick. But, I mean, for me, it was more the chemistry factor, which is why I kind of liked it in a sense. But I see where you're coming from. Robinson was good last year. If something's not broke, you don't need to fix it. And in that situation, maybe they went out to try to get support for Trevor. But
yeah,
what type of impact will Robinson have on this offense? I mean, it's left to be foreseen. I believe he had around 1,000 yards last year, so that was great to see. And hopefully, I'm hoping for the best for him. I mean, Andrew Norwell's back. So you have Laviska Shenault, who's a good weapon in the receiving core. So Jacksonville, I believe they signed Marvin Jones. I mean, they were busy in free agency.
Yeah, and they're getting a healthy DJ Chark back, who, when healthy, he's a really underrated receiver.
Yeah, he's good. That's kind of been the storyline of the offseason for the Jags, is who's going to end up being that number one wide receiver, because Chark has been hurt, and who's going to step up for him. And it has been Laviska Shenault. I think Marvin Jones is very sneaky. I think he's just, you saw it in preseason a lot. Trevor Lawrence, when he was under pressure, his safety net every play was Marvin Jones. And I think that's going to be a guy that's going to be great for Trevor Lawrence's development to have here in Jacksonville. And that's what Marvin Jones has been his entire career. He's just solid. He's consistent. He gets the job done. He's not flashy, but he helps out your quarterback when you need him.
Yeah. Was the guy when he was with Cincinnati right under AJ Green. He was the guy with Kenny Golladay with Detroit. So, no, I completely agree with that. And I think that's what, at least that would be my feeling. If I'm a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, that's what I have to look forward to, is really what can produce out of the offense. Because the defense, I think, is more so a question mark. What exactly are you getting out of this defense? Which leads into my next topic of discussion with Joe Schobert. I mean, explain that trade, because I really don't get that at all.
Not many fans did, actually. Not many fans did get this trade at first. I think that I don't think Joe Schobert fit what Urban Meyer wanted. What Urban Meyer wants, I don't really know. Joe Schobert is a very solid, consistent linebacker. I think that they are hoping to get more out of Myles Jack. The Jags last season were more of a 4-3 defense. Now they're switching it up to the 3-4 defense, which allows for guys like K'Lavon Chaisson and Josh Allen to kind of fall back to what they did in college. So I'm thinking that Urban Meyer is hoping that these two guys can fall back into the linebacker position and help out in coverage. And that's what Joe Schobert did best, is his coverage ability was fantastic. He was a good tackler. He got the job done there. K'Lavon Chaisson is the guy that Urban Meyer likes a lot out of camp. He was making plays all over the field during preseason and in practices. So I think that might have played into this Joe Schobert decision. But again, it is still a head scratcher to most people here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, Joe Schobert, one of my players that I wanted the Giants to sign a year ago, but we went and signed Blake Martinez, and I've been more than satisfied with that. Just want to get through a couple comments. Garth Michael Patrick, also from Florida, popping in real quick to say, what's up, guys? Glad to see you live. He's actually, fun fact, he's a Chargers fan from Florida, so that's always interesting. And yeah, that week one game from the Colts kept the Colts from winning that division last season. So if there was a positive in 2020, Vinny, there it was. Jacksonville did something right.
Yeah. Little things, little victories for Jackson is kind of what we're at right now.
And I like Jacksonville as a team. I mean, I have family down in Jacksonville, so I may be a little biased, but, when it comes to the AFC, them and Buffalo are the two teams I could see myself, liking, right? Jacksonville, they're in an interesting spot. We know Houston's going to be really bad, and the question is the Colts with Carson Wentz. Maybe this opens up the door for Jacksonville to maybe split a series against the Colts this year. So that'll be interesting to see if Jacksonville can get a 500 division record. That's probably a win as well, no?
I would hope so. I don't want to give a crappy answer like that, but I would hope so. But I think Indianapolis is still a very good team. I think they're a well-coached team. I think the concern with Jacksonville all season long is going to be their coaching, and I can personally see them being out coached in certain games, and it'd be a noticeable thing for Jacksonville, especially with Urban Meyer. I wasn't a big Urban Meyer fan to begin with. Coming in, I said I'd give him time, and I said I'd trust him, but again, I think that there's going to be some coaching matchups that he's going to lose, including ones against Indianapolis and Frank Wright.
Now, I think moving forward, we talked about, the coaching situation. And we've already heard things like, players aren't, in play of what Urban Meyer is structuring. And one of the biggest things to go forth with that statement and be supported by that statement was earlier a couple months ago when Urban Meyer decided to bring in Tim Tebow. And granted, he only lasted a week of preseason, but what did you make of that?
Oof. That's what I make of that. It was oof. The Jags wanted ticket sales. They wanted money. I mean, Shad Khan is not a dumb owner when it comes to making this team money. I think that move right there was a business move, a financial move to help sell tickets and move that needle. But again, Urban Meyer does want his guys on this team. I mean, you saw his free agency, you saw his draft. They were all guys that were brought in that were either like recruited under Urban Meyer or fit that same style that Urban Meyer coached in college, which is fine. If it works, fantastic. If it doesn't, you're going to really look like crap. But for the Tim Tebow thing, I think that was more so to bring in the money. And if it worked out, fantastic. It pays off in the end. If it doesn't, he's more of a locker room guy that helped people along the way. But that was really it. He was a terrible tight end.
Yeah, it definitely would have been an interesting story, and you're right about the profit, at least, because I know that for the first couple weeks that they signed him, he was like a top 10 selling jersey in the NFL shop. But I thought that there were, again, depending upon what he was able to do, I thought there was a legitimate case that he may make the team. And forget about just because, Urban Meyer brought it in, obviously the Florida affiliation, but because of the fact that at least it seems like for the past couple of years, I mean, maybe you could say Tyler Eifert, they haven't had a really established tight end.
Yeah.
So there had to have been some and don't quote me on this and tell me if I'm wrong, but if you're a Jacksonville fan, there had to have been a legitimate moment where you're like, this guy might make the 53 as like a backup tight end or maybe even the starter.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking to actually think that and consider that Tim Tebow might actually be the starter. But no, you are right. The Jaguars have not had a solid tight end in quite some time. I mean, they tried the experiment with Julius Thomas. Mercedes Lewis was here for a good period of time, and he was solid. But they have not had a great tight end here in Jacksonville in for as long as I can remember. And I mean, you saw the free agency market. You had Hunter Henry out there. You had Jonnu Smith out there. And then they end up signing, I can't remember his first name, but Manhurts, who I believe played for Carolina last year. Maybe I might be wrong on that one, but he's a solid blocking tight end. But that's it. It's like, that's the guy you get. That's the guy you get. I was like, oh man, this is a bummer. And then the Tebow thing, it's like, yeah, that he could make this team and be a starter because no one else is there. He drafted Luke Farrell out of Ohio State, another one of the guys he has connections to. We'll see how it goes to the Jags tight end group.
So since Tebow was cut, what surprise cuts have you seen?
I know the Jags really liked Pharaoh Cooper. He was a good special teams guy. I don't think I was that surprised by too many cuts. One name that really just kind of sparked my attention though would be Laquan Treadwell, a former first-round pick. He had a lot of hype coming into the league. They signed him on the during training camp, and he performed well in preseason and in camp. I remember I went to a lot of the scrimmages and the practices, and Laquan Treadwell was the standout wide receiver for the most part. And then they cut him. And the Jaguars just had a lot of wide receivers on their team during camp, and they had to cut them down somehow. They cut Colin Johnson, who I was a big fan of as well. But Laquan Treadwell would definitely be the most surprising cut to me because of how well he performed in the preseason and in camp.
Now, Vinny, one question to talk about, maybe a potential, candidate to be cut. And I don't think that this guy ever had a chance to be cut, but going into this preseason and during training camp, this guy's name was in trade talks for reasons I don't know. Don't watch the Jaguars close enough to really know the reason. What was the reasoning behind potentially moving on from a CJ Henderson after drafting him so high?
I think the concern with CJ Henderson, and I'm not sure how true those rumors actually were. But if true, I know there was a lot of concerns about his attitude off the field and a concern of his mental health. I know he was going through COVID and was battling through that. I think those rumors kind of stemmed from that and seeing him not on the field, not practicing, and people were kind of jumping to conclusions. I was never a fan of CJ Henderson coming out of the draft, but he's a good prospect. And I think that they do need to kind of take their time with him and see if he can develop. Now he doesn't have to be the number one guy either. They brought in Griffin from Seattle. They drafted Tyson Campbell in the second round. So they're kind of letting off the pressure of CJ Henderson and letting him develop. So again, I'm not sure how true those rumors were. But if they were, it would had to have been about his attitude off the field.
Mm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. A lot of these guys that are bubble players, something like that could make it or break it for a player. So I think that definitely played a big role. Sam Cardona saying hello. Sam, how are you? Make sure to go check out the Giants 53-man roster prediction video I just did with her earlier today. We'll have that up tomorrow morning. And Alec Laviska is about to ball out this year. He's probably right. He put up good rookie numbers last year, Vinny. So I'd be really pumped about him.
Oh, yeah.
And Andy wouldn't mind it either. He's on his fantasy team. There you go.
He's going to be on a lot of my rosters this season.
We want to ask you another question about impact players. Is there any players on the Jaguars that we should look out for that people aren't talking about? Obviously, Shenault, Trevor Lawrence are a couple of names, Myles Jack. But who else kind of flies under the radar that your average fan on the outside looking in might not know about right at the moment?
I would go with who I kind of mentioned earlier, Kayvon Chaisson. He's the guy that I think is going to step up big. Again, they traded Joe Schobert. They're moving to that 3-4 defense. I think that's going to be a huge thing. It gets those guys a lot more comfortable. He was a standout during camp, standout during preseason. I think he's going to be a lot more comfortable. He's going to drop back in coverage and make plays on tight ends all season long. I think he's going to get in the backfield or to the quarterback, I should say, and get those sacks. I think Kayvon Chaisson ends up being kind of your surprise player. I think there's going to be a few surprises on the defensive side of the ball. Jenkins at safety is going to do well. I think those two guys, Jenkins and Kayvon Chaisson, are probably going to be the guys that stand out and surprise people.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He was drafted high last year. He was in the first round. So
he was the Yannick Ngakoue trade, like the pick that we got for Yannick Ngakoue.
Kyle, is there anybody you had in mind?
I think, like Vinny alluded to earlier, I think it's Marvin Jones, because essentially, DJ Chark, even though he's missed a decent amount of time, he's going to be considered your number one. And I think at this point in time, although Laviska Shenault had a good rookie season last year, I think that immediately Marvin Jones is touted as your number 2 receiver. And I think that that's where it comes in, that veteran presence, which I think this Jacksonville team is missing. I'm looking at the names on this roster, and there are a lot of young guys that don't really have that much experience. And if they do, it's not a lot of good experience in terms of winning and success. And in his career, Marvin Jones, although he's been with teams like the Bengals and although he's been like teams with Detroit, he himself, individual accolades, he's been a well-established receiver for a long time now. And I feel like that can only help your receiving room to make better. It can only help your offense flourish. And like I said before, it's only going to help Trevor Lawrence, have an easier transition, especially now because he's losing that security blanket in Travis Etienne, who you already had a built chemistry with. You watched the preseason, like you said, Vinny, he was targeting Marvin Jones. That's the guy he was looking for. So I think that's the guy to look out for this year on this Jacksonville Jaguars team.
He will lead the team at least in targets, if not in all receiving stats this season.
That's definitely a good take. I think I kind of like this safety you guys got, Andre Cisco, in the third round.
Yeah.
I think he was an absolute steal. I think he could develop. So that's a guy I would keep an eye on too. But why don't we predict the record for the Jacksonville Jaguars this year? And again, this is somewhat of a draft because we don't know what's going to happen during the season. But Vinny, as the guest tonight, we'll start with you and then we'll go around the horn. And where do you think Jacksonville sits this year? Are they still a bottom of the barrel team in that division, or are they back to some relevancy?
I think we lucked out with Houston being the bottom of the barrel team in the AFC South. They're just a mess right now. So there's 2 games that we can at least beat up on somebody for once. But I think the Jaguars end at 6-11. I've went up and down the schedule multiple times on my show. We talk about it all the time, and I tried to go higher, and then I was like, I don't think I can. I don't think I can go any higher. And 6-11 is where I have them, which is a step in the right direction. It's positives for us Jags fans to go 6-11 and have the bright spot of Trevor Lawrence. I think he does well. I think the offense takes a step in the right direction, but eventually I think the Titans are too good, and I think the Colts are going to end up being pretty good as well. That kind of pushes the Jaguars back, and 6-11 is where we see the Jags. Their schedule is not too easy either. They've got a pretty middle of the road schedule with some tough teams from the start. So it'll be 6-11 for the Jags.
I'm going to go one under. I'm going to say 5-12. I see some winnable games here, right? You open up against the season against Houston. Then you play Denver. That's also potentially a winnable game. Maybe even a Cincinnati. Potentially the Jets towards the end of the season. And maybe even I'll throw this team in as well. Maybe even Atlanta. I mean, again, that offense that they have is lethal, but at the same time, that defense will give up 35 points. So
Yeah.
I think there's potential to potentially win that game as well. So I'll go 5-13. 5-12, my bad.
That's fair.
James.
I'm going 4-13. I'll go one step below Kyle. I mean, you got your quarterback. At least everybody thinks. I think you did too. It's going to be a big improvement from only winning one game last year. You got a whole bunch of new guys. You got a new quarterback with Urban Meyer. Urban, he coached in college, so he already knows, what it's like from coming from college to the NFL. I think you will be surprising some people. I think you have a lot of close games throughout the season, but, unfortunately fall short. But it'll be exciting. It won't be blowouts or it won't be boring.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's not boring. Especially, I'm going to be going to the games this year, and it's going to be too hot to just suffer again and again and again. Give us some wins. Give us some positives.
So, I was sitting at a Chili's in the airport in Jacksonville a week ago, and there's people just sitting there talking about the team, and this is around the time that Etienne went down with the injury, and I'm like, man, these people are just really depressed about their football team. There's just nothing good to talk about. And I personally think you guys have a chance to start the season off at 2-0. A chance because you play Houston week 1 and then you have Denver. And I believe the Denver game is at home.
Yep.
So there is some chance to start off 2-0. And with that being said, Vinny, I'm in alignment with you. I think 6-11 is the record for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think you'll start off 1-0. It'll be off to a good start. Then the schedule gets a little tough. You're right. Trevor Lawrence is going to go through some growing pains in year 1, but he's going to make a really strong case for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And I think that's the reason why I think Jacksonville slices out 6 wins in their 2021 schedule.
Yeah, and there's a lot of excitement. I mean, you talk about the excitement with the Jaguars. There is a lot of excitement on this schedule. I mean, they play it's Trevor Lawrence against Joe Burrow, and then Trevor Lawrence against Kyler Murray, and Tua's on the schedule as well. I mean, the Jaguars face a lot of other good quarterbacks, so it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these quarterback matchups for a young guy like Trevor Lawrence.
I agree. Now let's get into the team MVP aspect of this. Who is the team MVP for Jacksonville this year? Is it Trevor Lawrence or is it somebody else that kind of comes out of the blue? Because I think,
I'm gonna go with the guy we've talked about before. It's Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones is going to be the MVP. He might not wow you statistically, but Marvin Jones is just going to be the guy that just steps up and does what he needs to do for this Jags. James Robinson's another candidate, just to go away from the Trevor Lawrence pick, because that's just too easy. Marvin Jones or James Robinson. I'll lock in Marvin Jones, so I'm not on the fence.
I'm going to go with Myles Jack. I think you look at this defense, and I think he's probably – well, not probably. He is the best player on the defensive side of the ball. And while the offense, has a decent amount of question marks, and while I think that the offense, we talk about Marvin Jones, I think a lot of what we're going to see in a rookie season from a quarterback, no matter how great the stature is coming out, we're going to see a lot of dependency upon guys like James Robinson to put pressure off Trevor Lawrence, especially with that offensive line, at least the way they were playing in the preseason. And on top of the fact, what Myles Jack had the best season of his career last year with almost 120 tackles combined, had a sack, had an INT. On top of the fact, I believe in his contract, he has an opt-out after this year. So he's going to look to have the best season of his career so he can get paid. So that's who I think is going to be the team MVP this year in Myles Jack.
There's an interesting note, and if you guys don't mind, there's an interesting note with Myles Jack, too. He had one of his worst seasons the year before that because they moved him to middle linebacker where he just was not comfortable. He's normally an outside linebacker. That's where he fits the most. Going to this 3-4 defense that Jacksonville's going with under Joe Cullen, he's more of a weak side linebacker this time. They're not having him at the middle linebacker position. They brought in Damian Wilson there to be that middle linebacker type of guy. So you very well might see Myles Jack be that MVP and step up and continue to go into the right direction.
Yeah, I agree with Kyle. I think it's going to be Myles Jack. John Rankin says Jacksonville will lose in all caps.
Yeah, we are going to lose. Yeah,
I mean, each football team's got to at least record one loss in the season, right?
he's not wrong.
Well, I mean, there are teams that won't record a loss at all.
I was just about to say, you picked up Damian Wilson from the Chiefs, which was a criminally underrated signing, and then you got Shaquille Griffin from the Seahawks. So, Jacksonville did do some spending in this offseason, and I think defensively speaking, Myles Jack is a guy who continues to be on the rise. Again, they traded away Joe Schobert, so they feel very confident in Myles Jack. So he is my player. James, do you have a player?
Honestly, it would probably be, I don't know, Trevor Lawrence. He's been sticking out of my head. I mean, he's obviously
for a good reason.
Guy.
For a good reason.
Yeah, but you make that transition, man, especially with how bad of a team Jackson was last year. He's bringing a lot of hope to this team this year, turning them around. So I don't know if he's going to live up to that or not, but from my understanding, he can. So I can only see.
I sure hope so.
Vinny, one last question for you, because I'm curious, because I heard you say something earlier in the segment I want to go back to. Who wins this division? Because you said earlier the Titans are really good and the Colts are kind of in that discussion too. So I think I have an idea where your head's at, but I want to hear it from you. Who wins the AFC South?
Yeah, it's the Tennessee Titans. It's Titans, Colts, Jags, Texans, in that order. The Tennessee Titans are just the best. I don't even want to say they're the class of this division because, well, I don't like Tennessee. But the Titans are just too good. I mean, in comparison to the AFC South, I should say, Ryan Tannehill is there. I think they're going to rely on Ryan Tannehill a little bit more this coming season, adding Julio Jones. I think that's kind of a sign to say that they're going into, I wouldn't say a more pass-happy offense, but taking the load off Derrick Henry because that man cannot run 350-plus times a game. But adding Julio Jones there, the touchdowns are going to go up for Tennessee in the red zone for passing, and I think their defense is still a question mark. I believe they drafted Caleb Farley in the first round, and I think that kid's going to be really good. Aside from any health concerns, he's going to be a stud at corner for them. And but that offense is still really good. They're coached very well. If they can just avoid COVID and having their entire team on the COVID list midseason, they'll be first place.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree as well. I think it's going to be very, very tight, just like it was last season. It's going to come right down to the wire because while I think that Tennessee will come away with it, I think their defense and their team as a whole is not as well-rounded, I think, as the Colts. Their defense is impeccable. Their offensive line, same thing. And it's really, I mean, it just comes down to really the quarterback. That's really it. If they get a little bit above average play, I think it's right there. It's right there for the Colts to take, but I'm going to go with Tennessee.
James, who do you got?
I'm going with the Colts. You guys are all picking Tennessee, man. I got to go with the Colts. I got to change. I got to be the odd one out. The Colts, the Tennessee, they've been in the mix for a while. But I think this isn't their year because Tennessee relies heavy on Derrick Henry, and I think a lot of teams are going to figure that out. He's also gotten a year older. So I think the Colts are the team you're going to watch out for this year.
While this is true, I think Ferkser is a potential breakout candidate, not to mention they have A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. So I'm not really too worried about if Henry is contained some games. They have the aerial attack that they can go to. What I'm really concerned about is who the hell is going to play left tackle for the Colts? Sam Tevi's on IR. Eric Fisher is out with, I think he's on a COVID list or something. So, I mean, look, they're banged up. Their offensive line is a little bit banged up right now. So I'm going Tennessee. It's going to be interesting to see. And so we have 3 Tennessee, 1 Indianapolis. Vinny, before we let you go, I know you're doing a live show tonight, and I want you to plug your podcast and what you do over there.
Yeah, so I am the host and producer of the Rough Cut Sportscast. We go live every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 8:30 on YouTube. We're just switching to only YouTube this coming week, but we do baseball on Tuesdays. We do all sports Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. You can check us out at the Rough Cut Sportscast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we are on the push for 200 subscribers. So if you guys check us out and you like what you see, hit that subscribe button on YouTube and help us out and help us reach 200 subscribers.
Absolutely. Going to go do that right now if I haven't. I'm pretty sure I have, but I'm going to check that out. Vinny, all the way from Jacksonville, Florida, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you hopping on, spending some time. Had a lot of fun with this segment, and we'll have to have you back on and talk to you again soon.
Thank you guys for having me. I changed my prediction, by the way. Jaguars 17-0. They win this division.
Let's hope, my friend. Let's hope Jacksonville pulls off some magic. Thank you so much, Vinny.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Have a good one, man.
That was Vinny Milani from the Rough Cut Sportscast. Imagine a 17-0 Jacksonville season. I can't.